"Who's there?" The black man called from behind the door, his voice steady but cautious. A group of men in black uniforms with shiny badges answered with a smirk, claiming HOA enforcement. "Step outside now." The neighbors peeked nervously from behind their curtains, whispering among themselves. What they didn't know was that the man behind the door wasn't alone. "Open up. You're in violation of community code." One barked. Xavier's eyes narrowed. His hand rested casually on the table, but every muscle was coiled like a spring. Tonight, intimidation would meet its match, and a quiet suburban street was about to erupt. The neighborhood of Willowbrook Heights had always prided itself on its pristine lawn, identical mailboxes, and unspoken rules. Each house, painted in muted tones and neatly lined with freshly trimmed hedges, seemed to belong to a catalog. But behind the symmetry, behind the polite waves and friendly nods, a quiet tension simmered. Those who tried to bend the rules felt the full weight of the HOA's iron fist. And tonight, one black family would find out just how far that iron could reach. Darius Bennett sat in his living room, the fading orange light of dusk spilling across his hardwood floors. His hand, calloused from years of labor and service, rested on his knee. His eyes flicked toward the front door. Something about the evening felt wrong. Then here it started, a knock, sharp, demanding, not polite, not casual. Darius slowly rose, heart thumping in his chest. "Dad, do you hear that?" Xavier's voice was low, urgent. He had returned early from his deployment. A rare surprise meant to celebrate Darius's birthday. But now the shadows outside seemed to move differently, heavier somehow. Xavier's posture was relaxed only in appearance. Every muscle was coiled, alert. He pressed his eye to the peephole and froze. 3 men stood on the porch, dark uniforms, badges glinting in the fading sun, badges that declared authority they didn't truly have. One of them, tall and broad-shouldered, barked, "Open up. You're in violation of multiple HOA codes. Step outside calmly, and we can handle this the easy way." Darius blinked, incredulous. "HOA enforcement?" he muttered under his breath. He had dealt with petty fines before, but never this. Never threats this direct. Xavier stepped forward, arms folded across his chest. His sharp eyes met his father's. "I've got this," he said quietly. Darius's heart swelled with pride, but also a twinge of worry. His son had been trained to handle the deadliest situations on the planet. But this was suburban intimidation. It seemed almost laughable. Almost. The tallest man, a smug grin plastered across his face, shoved a hand toward the doorframe. "Sir, we're going to need you to comply. Resistance isn't advised." Resistance. That word hung in the air like a challenge. Xavier's hand brushed the edge of the console table. Not too fast, not threatening, just a subtle, deliberate motion. His body radiated control power, a presence honed by years of elite training. Darius swallowed, trying to steady his voice. "You're claiming to be HOA officers?" The man's sneer widened. "Yes, sir. This is official. Step outside. Now." Xavier's smile was faint, almost imperceptible. "You sure about that?" His tone was casual, almost bored, but there was still behind it an invisible warning. Behind the fake officers, the neighborhood seemed to pause. Curtains twitched. A dog barked nervously. A neighbor peeked from behind a window, phone in hand, recording what they assumed would be some minor drama. But they had no idea the danger that lurked behind that front door. The tallest man reached for the handle, but his hand barely brushed the knob before Xavier's movement snapped into precision. In one fluid motion, he had shifted toward the door, body low, eyes sharp, not aggressive, just a demonstration of readiness. The man froze. "You boys are about to make a huge mistake," Xavier said, voice calm, edged with warning. "Step back, now." The other 2 men exchanged glances. Doubt flickered across their face. They had been hired for intimidation, not for war. And suddenly, war seemed closer than ever. Darius stepped forward slowly, putting a hand on his son's shoulder. "Xavier," he began, voice tense. "Maybe we can—" "No," Xavier interrupted, eyes fixed on the men outside. "Let me handle this. Stay inside." The tallest man squared his shoulders, trying to regain composure. "This is harassment," he spat. "We are enforcing community standards. Step outside now, sir." Xavier tilted his head slightly. Enforcing standards? Or just testing someone who won't bow down to petty tyrants? His tone was casual, but every word was a strike, every syllable a measured push against the facade of authority. The man's hand twitched toward the cuffs at his belt. Cuffs that were, in truth, fake, nothing more than props meant to intimidate. Xavier's eyes followed every move with lethal precision. "You think those little toys intimidate me?" Xavier asked, voice low, dangerous. "They're nothing. Step back. One move, and you'll wish you'd stayed home." For a moment, time seemed suspended. The street, the houses, fading sunlight, all faded into background. There was only the tension between the door and the 3 men who thought authority came from badges and bluster. Then Darius stepped in front of his son. "We don't need to escalate," he said, trying to reason. But even his words carried weight, reinforced by the presence of a trained Navy SEAL ready for action. The tallest man glared, trying to regain control. "You think just because your son," he paused, mouth opening and closing, searching for words, but finding none that carried power. Xavier's hand shifted slightly, almost imperceptibly, toward the side of the door. In an instant, his posture, his presence, his energy conveyed everything the men needed to know. They were outmatched. They were in over their head. "You came here to bully us," Xavier said quietly, "to intimidate. But you forgot one thing. You don't know who lives here. You don't know what waits behind this door." The three men hesitated, suddenly aware that the suburban theater they thought they controlled was slipping. The tallest man's knuckles whitened as he gripped the cuff case. "Step back," Xavier repeated. "One more inch, and you'll regret it." The air shifted. From behind the porch, Gideon Crowley, the HOA president, finally stepped forward, arms crossed, wearing that smug grin of someone who believed they held power. "Do as I say," he barked. "This is HOA property." "You!" Xavier's voice cut him off like a whip. "You think your little HOA rules matter here? You think you can intimidate a man whose family served this country? Step back, Gideon." The smirk faltered. For the first time, Crowley hesitated. He hadn't counted on the son being home. He hadn't counted on training, discipline, and lethal precision lurking behind that door. Neighbors had begun to gather quietly, sensing the tension. Phones were raised, cameras focused. This was no ordinary dispute. Something had shifted. The street was alive with suspense. Xavier's gaze swept across the porch, measuring distance, angles, and advantage. One wrong move could escalate this into chaos, but it already calculated the consequences. "Drop the act," Xavier said, voice calm but deadly. "No cuff, no badges, no pretend authority. Leave, or you leave differently." A bead of sweat traced down Crowley's temple. The men on the porch shifted nervously. They had underestimated this family. They had underestimated the stakes. For a long moment, silence reigned. Then, slowly, the three men stepped back, their fake badges glinting uselessly in the dying sunlight. Crowley's mouth opened, then closed. He sputtered, trying to reclaim dignity. Xavier stepped aside, opening the door fully now. Darius emerged, calm but resolute. "You wanted compliance. You wanted fear. You got neither. Now leave, before things get serious." The men hesitated again, measuring risk, but the presence in the doorway told them all they needed to know. Retreat was the only choice. As they backed down the driveway, Xavier whispered to his father, "This isn't over. They'll try again, but they won't win." Darius nodded. "I know, but tonight we stood our ground." The neighborhood exhaled collectively, tension fading but lingering. Willowbrook Heights had witnessed something unusual, authority tested, bravery revealed, and a family unbroken. From the shadows of the street, eyes watched, phones buzzed, neighbors whispered, and somewhere far away, someone was planning their next move. The HOA had underestimated, but what they didn't know was that the Bennett family was just getting started. The quiet of the evening returned, but beneath it simmered a storm. And when the storm hit, it wouldn't just be about HOA intimidation. It would be about power, justice, and a reckoning the cul-de-sac would never forget. Part 2, the siege began. The night had swallowed Willowbrook Heights, but the Bennett house remained a beacon of quiet defiance. Inside, Darius and Xavier moved through the living room with measured purpose. Every shadow, every creak of the floorboards seemed amplified in the stillness. Outside, the faint silhouettes of the cul-de-sac whispered secrets of watchful neighbors. "Dad, they're not done," Xavier said, his voice low, his eyes scanning the darkened street. "This was just a test. The HOA, or whoever's behind them, want to see our reaction. They'll try again, bigger, bolder." Darius sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "I figured as much. I've dealt with harassment before, but this feels orchestrated, too precise to be random." Xavier knelt, inspecting the security cameras mounted near the porch. "They were amateurs tonight," he muttered, "but someone funded them, someone powerful, and they're learning fast." He tapped a finger against the monitor, replaying the footage from earlier. The three fake officers had been clumsy, overconfident, but the HOA president, Gideon Crowley, had lingered too long, watching the street, signaling from his SUV. Darius leaned over the screen. "So it's bigger than just Willowbrook?" "Much bigger," Xavier said, his jaw tightened. "I need to prepare for what comes next. If they think intimidation worked, they'll escalate. I want all exits monitored, motion sensors, cameras, the works. Nothing leave this cul-de-sac unnoticed." The quiet of the living room was punctuated by a sudden buzz, the security system alert. Xavier's eyes narrowed, checked the driveway. Outside, three dark SUVs rolled slowly past, their headlights cutting thin paths through the night. Shadows of men inside moved with calculated precision. Not amateurs, professionals. Someone had decided to send a message, and the message was clear: back down or face consequences. Xavier slipped into tactical gear, silent and swift. Darius, though older, moved with practiced calm, reaching for a handgun safely secured in the living room cabinet. Xavier, he said, remember, our priority is protection, not confrontation. Keep everyone safe. I know, Dad, Xavier replied, voice tight, but they want to fight, and I'm not the type to let them dictate terms. The SUV nearest the driveway slowed, parking partially in the shadow. 3 men stepped out, tall, broad, and moving in perfect synchronization. They weren't wearing HOA uniforms this time. No, these were real tactical outfits, black, reinforced, intimidating, helmets, body armor, boots that clicked with authority. They weren't bluffing. Darius cursed under his breath. They brought reinforcement. Xavier's eyes glimmered with resolve. Not for long. The front door clicked open silently, Xavier and Darius taking positions near the entrance. Xavier's voice was barely audible. Remember the plan. You take the rear. I handle the front. We channel them. Don't let them flank. From the street, a voice called out, amplified and distorted. Jordan Bennett, step outside. This is your final warning. Comply and no one gets hurt. Darius stiffened. They know our names now. Names don't matter, Xavier said. Skill matters, and we've got more than they bargained for. The first SUV's door slammed. The men advanced, slow, deliberate. The crunch of gravel under their boots echoed through the cul-de-sac like war drum. Xavier's hand rested lightly on the doorframe. Fingers brushing the Glock, he kept ready. Each movement was precise, honed by years of Navy SEAL training. The tallest man, a silent figure behind night vision goggles, raised a hand. His voice, calm but authoritative, cut through the tension. You have exactly 30 seconds to comply. Open the door. Step outside. Xavier's response was measured, a calm edge of menace. I suggest you reconsider your time. 30 seconds will pass and you'll regret staying. The men hesitated. Their helmets reflected dim light, but beneath the visors, doubt flickered. They were trained, yes, but Xavier's presence radiated more than confidence. It radiated inevitability. Then, without warning, Xavier triggered a series of silent alarms and deterrent. Flashing lights in the front yard, sprinklers activating and motion-triggered decoys created confusion. The 3 men paused, scanning, their formation breaking. Xavier slipped into the shadow, flanking to intercept. Darius moved swiftly to the rear, securing the side gate. Xavier, how many? He called softly. 3 outside. 2 more in vehicles, Xavier whispered. They're coordinating, but they underestimated our prep. From inside the house, Xavier communicated silently with his father, moving like shadow, exploiting cover and calculated angles. One of the men outside advanced too close, only to trip a silent wire, activating a net trap that sent him sprawling to the ground, entangled and helpless. The remaining men froze, assessing the sudden turn. The black-clad assailants were professional, yes, but they weren't expecting traps, calculations, or a defender who anticipated every step. Xavier's training allowed him to predict movements almost before they happened. Darius called out from the rear. They've split. Xavier gritted his teeth. Good. Makes them easier to handle. He approached the tallest man, silent and fluid, positioning behind cover. With one swift maneuver, the man was disarmed, cuffed with tactical restraints, and neutralized. The other 2 were confused, scrambling to regroup. From inside, Darius monitored the rear gate. One assailant had tried to flank. A quick flash from a stun device immobilized. The other, still outside the front, hesitated, then retreated, signaling to the vehicle. A voice crackled over comms, distorted, electronic. Xavier Bennett, this is only the beginning. Step down and the rest of your family stays safe. Xavier's jaw tightened. You should have picked another street. Outside, the remaining SUV reversed, wheels spinning gravel. The assailants knew the battle was lost, but the threat remained. Someone bigger was behind this. Someone with power, someone who had resources. And Xavier could sense it. Darius exhaled, finally lowering his gun. That was close. Too close, Xavier replied. His eyes scanned the perimeter. They tested us. They wanted to see what we could do. But the real battle hasn't started. Someone's orchestrating this. Darius nodded. We've been in danger situations before, son, but this, it's personal. They want fear. They want submission. And we gave them neither. Xavier moved to the window, observing the quieting street. They'll come back. And next time, they'll bring more. We need a plan, intelligence, and allies. This isn't just Willowbrook anymore. This is a battlefield disguised as suburbia. The night deepened. The neighborhood, once a place of quiet order, now felt alive with tension. Eyes watching, cameras recording, whispers spreading. The Bennett house had become a fortress, a symbol, and a challenge. Inside, father and son prepared. Tactical maps spread across the dining room table. Cameras rechecked, exit points memorized. Every move, every angle, every contingency was planned. We'll be ready, Xavier said, voice steady, eyes focused. They think intimidation worked. They think fear wins, but they've underestimated us. They've underestimated the Bennett. Darius placed a hand on his son's shoulder. We stand together. No one breaches this house. No one intimidates our family. family. You taught me courage today. Xavier's eyes softened briefly. No, Dad, we've always had courage. Tonight just proved it. The street outside remained quiet for now, but the air thrummed with the promise of escalation. Whoever had sent the black SUVs and trained operatives had not finished, and Xavier, Navy SEAL, trained for the deadliest operations, knew it. The night stretched long, filled with vigilance, strategy, and silent determination. And as the first rays of dawn hinted at the horizon, a silent promise echoed in the walls of the Bennett home. Intimidation would never prevail. The HOA thought they could bully. The professionals thought they could scare. But the Bennetts had answered the door. And now the rules had changed. Part 3, Shadows in the Suburb. The Bennett house had transformed overnight. What once appeared as a quiet, two-story family home now looked like a tactical command center. Cameras lined the perimeter. Sensors scanned every shadow, and the faint hum of drones patrolling overhead added an unsettling sense of vigilance. Inside, Xavier and Darius reviewed footage from the previous night, analyzing the assailants' movements, body language, and every minor misstep. They weren't amateurs, Dad, Xavier said, eyes narrowed at the screen. They were trained, but they weren't expecting traps or anticipation. Whoever sent them wanted to test us. Darius rubbed his chin thoughtfully. You think it's the HOA president, Gideon Crowley, alone? Xavier shook his head. Crowley is a pawn. He has influence in Willowbrook. Sure, but look at the resources. Black SUVs, tactical training, coordinated flanking. It's bigger, much bigger. From the monitor, Xavier paused footage of the tallest operative struggling against a net trap. Notice how he hesitated when I flanked him? That hesitation wasn't instinct. It was training meeting uncertainty. They weren't expecting a defender like me. Darius nodded. And they won't forget it. If they return, they'll come better prepared. Exactly, Xavier replied, leaning back, which means we have to be ready before they even knock. The quiet hum of the house was interrupted by a knock, soft, almost hesitant, but precise. Darius's hand moved instinctively toward his handgun. Xavier's eyes narrowed. Dad, don't move yet, he whispered. Let me handle this. Xavier approached the door slowly, every step calculated. He peered through the peephole. Outside stood two men, holding what appeared to be HOA violation notices, but the precision of their stance, the synchronization of their movements betrayed training. Not random resident, not amateurs, professionals. Xavier opened the door slightly, just enough to speak. Can I help you? His tone was calm but edged with authority. The taller man straightened. Mr. Bennett, we are here to discuss the violations at your property. You have 20 seconds to comply voluntarily. Xavier's eyes flicked to the other man, noting hand positions, weight distribution, and subtle micro-movement. Violations? Are you wearing the right uniform? The shorter man hesitated. We are authorized to... Stop, Xavier interrupted sharply. I need identification. Real, verifiable, and I need it now. The taller man faltered, and Xavier's hand subtly brushed the doorframe, fingers resting near the Glock. Take one more step, and you'll find out why I don't answer to amateurs. The men exchanged glances, uncertainty flickering behind their visors. Xavier knew this was a leverage he needed. Hesitation in a trained operative indicated a gap. Information, confidence, or fear. Back off, Xavier continued. This isn't HOA enforcement. This is trespassing. You're out of your depth. Inside, Darius monitored the rear gate, noting shadows shifting across the backyard. They've split forces, he murmured. One set the front, one moving behind the house. Xavier's gaze hardened. I figured as much. Dad, get the back perimeter ready. I'll handle the front. The men outside took a cautious step back, reassessed. Xavier seized the moment. He reached for a small earpiece connecting to a hidden camera in the front yard. He whispered instructions into the mic, coordinating precise defensive measures. Spotlights flickered on, illuminating the cul-de-sac, blinding the approaching men, while automated deterrents, harsh sirens, motion-triggered sprinklers activated. The taller man cursed under his breath. He's prepared. He's more than prepared, the shorter replied, stepping back. We need support. Xavier's lips curved into a faint smile. Good, because you just called in a response team. That doesn't bluff. From the side, Darius intercepted the operative trying to flank. With one swift motion, he immobilized him, using technique honed from years in tactical preparation. The man struggled, but Darius's grip was unyielding. Tell your boss, Darius said quietly, that you underestimated us. Back at the front, Xavier confronted the remaining operative, hands raised slightly, but ready for aggression. Identify yourself, Xavier demanded. The operative's visor reflected the streetlight, masking his expression. But in his stance, Xavier read fear, hesitation, weakness. I'm just following orders, the man stammered. Xavier's voice was icy. Orders don't excuse criminal trespass. Who sent you? The operative faltered. His hand twitched near his belt. A mistake. Xavier's training told him the story. A trigger hand untrained for real combat, acting out of fear rather than precision. In one fluid movement, Xavier disarmed him, cuffing him against the railing of the Bennett porch. The man's eyes widened. You're Navy SEAL. Xavier's glare cut him off. not for bragging, for survival. And I suggest you cooperate if you value it. Inside, Darius was already interrogating the operative he captured. The information came in fragments. Someone funding the intimidation, someone orchestrating the HOA-like harassment, and a name whispered with respect and fear. Victor Rinaldi. Xavier's eyes narrowed. Rinaldi, the same man Dad warned me about. He's moving beyond the city into suburb, using local power as leverage. Willowbrook was his testing ground. Darius nodded grimly, and now we're in his sight. The front street was quiet again, but the hum of engines in the distance suggested reinforcement. Xavier knew the night wasn't over. It was escalating. Whoever sent these operatives would return, more prepared, more ruthless. And next time, mistakes wouldn't be tolerated. He activated the comm system, reaching out to a contact within the Navy SEAL network. We've got a potential escalation, Xavier whispered. Need eyes and intel, fast. From the darkness, a distorted voice spoke through a hidden mic. Bennett, consider tonight a warning. Rinaldi doesn't forget. Neither do his men. Xavier's jaw tightened. I remember too, and I don't forgive. They'll learn soon enough. Darius joined him at the window, scanning the quiet cul-de-sac. Do you think the neighborhood knows? They do now, Xavier replied, and that knowledge works in our favor. Community eyes are powerful, but we can't rely on them entirely. Next time, the threat won't come from amateurs or predictable tactics. It'll come from professionals who think fear is the key. The Bennett house, fortified and vigilant, became a symbol, an immovable force in a landscape of intimidation. From the outside, the cul-de-sac appeared calm, ordinary, but inside every corner, every shadow, every exit was under surveillance, ready for the inevitable next wave. Hours later, as the sun barely hinted at the horizon, Xavier reviewed footage from overnight. He had identified patterns, deduced movement tendencies, and prepared contingencies for multiple attack scenarios. The adversary was clever, coordinated, but not infallible. Darius watched his son work. You've changed, Xavier. Tonight, I saw the Navy SEAL training applied to protect more than just a mission. You protected family, neighborhood, and principle. Xavier paused, glancing at his father. It's not just about training, Dad. It's about anticipating consequences, calculating risks, and controlling the unknown. That's survival. And survival, Xavier knew, was about to be tested again, because Victor Rinaldi's shadow loomed larger than they realized, and the war had only begun. The neighborhood slept fitfully, unaware of the invisible battle unfolding in their midst. But the Bennett house was ready, every measure, every strategy, every contingency in place. And when the next strike came, it would find not fear, but unyielding resolve. Xavier looked out at the street one last time. They'll learn this soon enough. You don't intimidate the Bennett. You answer the door to consequences. The message was clear, the line drawn. And somewhere in the distance, the engines of darkness began to stir, preparing for the confrontation that would decide Willowbrook's fate. Part 4, The Reckoning in Willowbrook. The first rays of dawn barely cut through the mist that hung over Willowbrook. The neighborhood seemed peaceful, calm, almost ordinary, but Xavier Bennett knew better. The quiet was deceptive. He and Darius had prepared for this day. Victor Rinaldi's network had escalated their plan, and Willowbrook was about to become the stage for a showdown unlike anything the community had seen. Xavier checked the tactical monitors one last time. Every perimeter, every blind spot, every vulnerable point had been secured. Drones hovered silently above, cameras streamed live footage, and automated security systems were primed. The fake HOA cops from before were only the beginning. This time, real professionals were coming. From the east, a convoy of black SUVs approached, their tinted windows reflecting the rising sun. Xavier's eyes narrowed. Dad, they've arrived. Darius adjusted his tactical vest. Let's make sure they regret it. Xavier stepped to the front porch, arms crossed, observing the approaching vehicle. He recognized some of the men from intelligence reports, Rinaldi's personal enforcers, trained mercenaries, and operatives with criminal backgrounds spanning multiple states. They moved with precision, flanking each other, weapons ready. The lead SUV stopped abruptly at the cul-de-sac entrance. The driver's door opened. A man in a tailored suit stepped out, tall, commanding, with the unmistakable aura of authority that sent shivers down anyone's spine. Victor Rinaldi. He scanned the neighborhood, eyes cold, calculating. Bennett, he called, his voice carrying across the street. We've been patient. Consider this a courtesy warning. Xavier stepped forward. Rinaldi, you underestimated one thing. You don't mess with family, training, and principle all in one house. Rinaldi smirked. We'll see about that. He signaled his men, and the SUVs shifted, forming a tactical perimeter around the Bennett property. This wasn't negotiation anymore. anymore. It was a siege. Inside the house, Darius monitored the rear cameras. They've split forces. 2 flanks, 1 frontal assault. Dad, this isn't a drill. Xavier loaded his sidearm, checking the sight. Not a drill, indeed. Let's teach them the cost of underestimation. The first SUV doors opened, and Rinaldi's operatives advanced cautiously. They expected intimidation, chaos, maybe some fear. But they didn't expect the meticulous traps, calculated ambushes, and lethal precision waiting for them. From the front porch, Xavier's voice cut through the air. Step onto my property, and you step into consequences. The operatives hesitated, but loyalty and orders compelled them forward. As the first 2 men stepped onto the lawn, automated nets launched from hidden devices, entangling them. Drones above released blinding strobes, disorienting the rest. Inside, Darius intercepted 2 operatives attempting a rear entry. With swift, controlled movements, he incapacitated them, using takedown techniques that left no room for recovery. Xavier moved like a shadow, fluid, precise, his training evident in every motion. One operative lunged with a rifle. Xavier anticipated, sidestepped, disarmed him, and neutralized the threat. The other froze, realizing too late that every approach had been accounted for. Rinaldi watched from the SUV, impressed yet furious. Bennett impressive, but predictable. We adapt, always adapt. He signaled the next wave. Heavy vehicles began to circle, men descending with heavier firearms, ready for a full assault. Xavier's eyes flicked to Darius. Time to escalate. Darius activated the final phase of the defensive plan. Smoke generators, decoy figures, and hidden barricades that channeled the assailants into narrow zone. Every movement was anticipated, every approach restricted. The first wave was overwhelmed. Operatives struggled to regroup, confusion spreading like wildfire. Xavier and Darius moved with surgical precision, neutralizing threats one by one, keeping civilian casualties 0, and using intelligence to isolate the most dangerous target. From the center SUV, Rinaldi stepped out, weapon in hand. Enough games, he shouted. Bennett, surrender. Xavier didn't flinch. Surrender? Not my style. Not my family style. Not my neighborhood style. Rinaldi raised his gun, but Xavier had already closed the distance in 3 swift steps. Using a combination of defensive tactics and precise strike, he disarmed Rinaldi, sending the weapon clattering across the driveway. Darius moved in, securing Rinaldi with restraint. You underestimated the Bennett, he said, voice calm but cutting. Rinaldi's eyes flicked to the remaining operatives, panic flashing. This isn't over. Not for you, Xavier replied. It is over for anyone who tries to intimidate my family or this community. Within minutes, the FBI and local law enforcement arrived. Called by covert signals Xavier had triggered earlier. Operatives were taken into custody, Rinaldi detained, and the streets cleared. Neighbors emerged cautiously, watching the aftermath of the siege. Their cul-de-sac, once a quiet suburban landscape, had been the battlefield of calculated justice. Xavier addressed the neighbors. This neighborhood belongs to all of us, but it doesn't belong to fear, intimidation, or criminal power. We defend it, not with luck, but with preparedness, courage, and unity. Applause and murmurs of gratitude echoed. Willowbrook would never forget the day intimidation met its match. Days later, Rinaldi's network faced arrests across multiple states. Investigations revealed his attempt to infiltrate suburban communities, manipulate HOA systems, and intimidate civilians through manufactured fear. Every scheme he had orchestrated had been traced back to his personal command center, now dismantled. Xavier and Darius returned to their routine, but vigilance remained. The neighborhood respected them not just for their skill, but for their integrity, for standing against intimidation when most would have cowered. At night, on the porch, Xavier looked out over Willowbrook, eyes scanning the horizon. Dad, he said quietly, tonight we won, but there will always be shadow. Darius nodded. Then we stay ready. Always, and ready they would remain. For in a world where fear is used as a weapon, the Bennetts had proven one truth. Courage, preparation, and family could defeat even the most formidable threats. The neighborhood slept peacefully once again, but the legacy of that day would linger forever. A warning to all who sought to intimidate. The Bennetts answered the door, not with fear, but with unstoppable resolve. And somewhere behind bars, Rinaldi would remember the man who answered his knock, a Navy SEAL-trained son, ready to defend home, family, and principle at all costs. The war was over. The lesson was clear, and Willowbrook had found its guardian.